Penguins embody a uniquely specialized evolutionary experiment, tracing back tens of millions of years to ancient, flightless seabirds that conquered the oceans instead of the sky. This phylogenetic journey highlights how their remarkable diversity arose from this singular path, shaping lineages that are both long-lived and unlike any other birds on Earth. First in this lineage stands Waimanu, a stem penguin from the Paleocene seas of Aotearoa, New Zealand, living only a few million years after the end Cretaceous extinction and already approaching an emperor penguin in size. As one of the basalmost known spheniciforms, its long, streamlined body, narrow spear-like bill and partly specialized but not yet fully modern flipper wings suggest a powerful wing-propelled diver that may have moved more like a flightless loon or great auk than any living penguin. Fossils from the Waipara greensand make Waimanu a crucial calibration point for penguin origins and show that both penguins and other major bird lineages were diversifying rapidly in the wake of the dinosaurs' disappearance. Waimanu is a slightly younger Paleocene stem penguin from the Waipara greensand of New Zealand, known from newly detailed skeletons that secure it among the earliest branches of Sphenisciforms and clarify how penguin body plans diversified soon after the end Cretaceous crisis. Its long, narrow beak, relatively light frame, and paddle-like wings, apparently driven with a more flexed underwater stroke than in living penguins, evoke a swift pursuit diver that captures an intermediate stage between volant seabirds and the fully stiff-flippered modern penguins. Waimanu emerges from 58-million-year-old Waipara seas as one of the earliest and best-preserved stem penguins, its detailed skeleton fixing a deep branch of Spheniciforms and sharpening how we time the first experiments in penguin evolution after the end Cretaceous world. About the size of a modern king penguin, with a long spear-like beak, powerful flippered forelimbs and hindlimb proportions echoing a giant penguin, it suggests a streamlined pursuit diver already proficient in underwater flight while early lineages were rapidly testing extreme body plans in the Paleocene oceans. Kupupu, the diving bird of the Paleocene Takatika Grit on the Chatham Islands, is one of the earliest penguins whose hind limbs and feet already mirror those of living species, signaling an advanced commitment to a fully aquatic lifestyle. Standing at roughly 1.1 meters tall, with compact, muscular legs and strong flipper-like wings, it would have coursed through cool coastal waters with a stroke pattern strikingly close to modern penguins. Its anatomy marks a pivotal stage in spheniciform evolution, revealing how rapidly the lineage locked into the upright, efficient diving design that still defines penguins today. Kaika, the fish-eater of the early Eocene seas of South Canterbury, is known only from a single humerus in the Cowra Formation, yet already stands among the most archaic and informative basal penguins at the root of the Spheniciforms. Its slender, sigmoid curved flipper bone, preserving primitive muscle attachment patterns while beginning to stiffen for powerful strokes, hints at a streamlined fish hunter in which the first true penguin-style underwater flight was being assembled from a more generalized seabird frame. Kumimanu, the Maori monster bird, looms over the Paleocene shores of New Zealand as a gigantic stem penguin, about 1.7 meters tall and around 100 kilograms, that demonstrates how swiftly penguins experimented with colossal size after the end Cretaceous extinction. Its robust yet plesiomorphic limb bones place it outside later giant lineages, revealing that gigantism arose independently very early within the spheniciform radiation. In life, with a deep-barreled chest, long powerful beak and broad flippers driving slow, forceful strokes, Kumimanu would have been an apex pursuit diver of cool coastal waters, an imposing predator that hints at penguins evolving toward marine mammal-like roles while still retaining their avian framework. Palaeeudyptinae is a latest early, Middle Paleocene stem penguin from the Waipara greensand whose partial skeleton, including a finely built mandible, shows proportional differences that separate it from Palaeeudyptinae and secure it as yet another distinct branch in the earliest radiation of Sphenisciforms. Its relatively small, gracile frame and limb morphology imply an agile, shallow-water pursuit diver, refining how we picture early penguins partitioning body size and feeding niches as they rapidly diversified along Zealandia's ancient shores. Tanyurnis, from the late Eocene La Meseta Formation of Seymour Island, represents a distinct lineage of medium-sized Antarctic stem penguins, known chiefly from specialized humeri that set it apart amid the rich local spheniciform fauna. Its limb proportions and well-developed flipper musculature suggest a streamlined pursuit diver occupying an ecological middle ground between the colossal giants and later, more derived penguins, adept at hunting in temperate, high-latitude seas. Wiminornis, known from a distinctive humerus in the late Eocene La Meseta beds of Seymour Island, occupies a cautious place among Antarctic stem penguins, clearly a true spheniciform, yet difficult to thread precisely into later lineages because of its fragmentary record. Its robust, well-keeled wing bone implies a compact, strong-flippered seabird adapted to sustained underwater propulsion in cool, high-latitude coastal waters, adding one more nuance to the crowded and morphologically diverse penguin assemblages that thrived before Antarctic glaciation. Nucleornis, the nuclear penguin of early Pliocene South Africa, is known from powerful tarsometatarsi uncovered near the Coburg Nuclear Power Station and Langebannweg, revealing a bird approaching the largest living penguins in size and positioned close to, but just outside, the core crown group lineages. Its near-modern foot structure and mass hint at a strong, efficient swimmer exploiting rich coastal upwelling systems, capturing a stage where penguins had already achieved their characteristic anatomy while still experimenting with giant forms on the Atlantic shore of Africa. Aprosdokitos from the late Eocene Submeseta Formation of Seymour Island, is the tiniest known Paleogene Antarctic penguin, diagnosed from fully ossified but minute humeri that confirm it as a distinct small-bodied spheniciform rather than a juvenile giant. In life it likely resembled a delicate, little penguin-sized diver with slim but dense flipper bones, weaving through cooler coastal waters and targeting small fish or invertebrates in niches overlooked by its towering neighbors. Its coexistence with much larger penguins highlights how early Antarctic assemblages were already partitioning body size and foraging strategies in sophisticated, modern-like ways. Archaeodyptes, the old diver of the Phoenician Waipara greensand, is a medium-sized Paleocene stem penguin, comparable to today's yellow-eyed penguin, known from a partial skeleton including skull bones that firmly anchors it among the earliest diverging spheniciforms. Its elongated beak and still primitive but increasingly specialized diving apparatus sketch a sleek inshore hunter, capturing another subtle step in the rapid assembly of the penguin underwater toolkit along New Zealand's ancient shelves. Petrodyptes emerges only a few million years after the end Cretaceous extinction as a massive stem penguin, heavier than any living species yet still smaller than its giant contemporary Kumimanu. Its partial skeleton, liberated from wave-rounded boulders, reveals a powerfully built but relatively elongate flipper and shoulder girdle that place it phylogenetically between archaic forms like Waimanu and more crown-ward lineages, tracking a key phase in the refinement of sustained underwater flight. In life, Petrodiptes would have been a formidable coastal hunter in the cool Zealandian seas, driving strong strokes through the water column to pursue larger prey than smaller contemporaneous penguins could manage. Waperdips is a Paleocene stem penguin from New Zealand known from partial skull, mandible, wing and leg bones, whose unusually slender tarsometatarsus sets it apart from more robust early Sphenisciforms and secures it as a distinct branch among the oldest penguin lineages. In life, this lightly built bird was likely an agile coastal hunter, its refined limbs and capable flippers carrying it through shallow seas as early penguins began to partition swimming styles and feeding niches along Zealandia's shores. Daniadyptes, the Dannean diver from the Selandian Waipara greensand, is currently resolved as the basalmost known member of Sphenisciforms, its delicate humerus and possible tibiotarsus preserving a mosaic of primitive features that anchor the penguin lineage at the very dawn of their fossil record. In life it would have been a lightly built seabird plying nearshore waters, testing the first steps toward wing-propelled diving while still retaining much of the anatomy of its non-penguin waterbird ancestors. Palaeeudyptes, the small diver of the late Oligocene oatcake limestone, is the earliest known tiny penguin, its fragmentary limb bones revealing a bird comparable in size to today's little penguin yet phylogenetically close to crowned Spheniciforms. Its humerus combines a modernized proximal end with a more primitive elbow joint, capturing a crucial intermediate stage in the stiffening of the penguin wing for efficient underwater flight. In the coastal waters of South Canterbury, Palaeeudyptes would have foraged nimbly over short ranges, embodying how miniaturization and refined flipper mechanics evolved in tandem within the broader penguin radiation. Mirambiornopsis, a late Eocene submeseta formation penguin from Seymour Island, is a small-bodied spheniciform, probably adult-sized, diagnosed from a distinctive tarsometatarsus whose proportions and internal structure mark it off from Marambiornis, Mesotaornis and other contemporaneous taxa. This compact, agile diver, moving through cool Antarctic shelf waters amid much larger relatives, illustrates how fully modern style size and niche partitioning had already emerged in penguin communities long before the onset of major Antarctic glaciation. Palaeeudyptes, a Middle Eocene stem penguin from Peru's Paracas Formation near the ancient equator, bridges an around 20 million year gap in the penguin record, its deeply excavated temporal fossa and long, narrow bill preserved in one of the most informative early penguin skulls. Its wings and limbs fuse primitive features shared with Waimana-like ancestors and more derived flipper specializations, conjuring a sturdy, efficient diver that charts how penguins refined underwater flight while expanding boldly into warm, low-latitude seas. Crossvallia, including the giant Paleocene species Onionwillia from Seymour Island and Waparensis from the Waipara greensand, forms an early lineage of massive stem penguins whose limb anatomy links them to Anthropornithinae and shows that gigantism appeared swiftly after penguins first colonized southern high-latitude seas. Standing around 1.6 meters tall with powerful legs and robust, only partly modernized flippers, they likely strode heavily over coastal flats yet plunged as formidable pursuit divers offshore, foreshadowing the top predator niches later filled by the great Eocene penguin giants. Incayacu ruled the warm late Eocene seas of coastal Peru as a near-modern giant penguin about 1.5 meters long and roughly twice the mass of an emperor penguin, driving itself with sleek paddle-like wings and a long, forceful bill. Its exquisitely preserved feathers and melanosomes reveal not the familiar black and white tuxedo, but muted grays and reddish browns, demonstrating that the specialized, densely packed melanosomes of living penguins evolved later. Uniting highly efficient underwater flight with ancestrally patterned plumage, Inkayaku marks a key moment when penguins have become consummate marine divers while still exploring a very different visual and structural feather palette. Palaeeudyptes, a late Eocene giant from Peru's Otuma Formation, stood around 1.5 meters tall and wielded an extraordinary spear-like bill with a powerful, streamlined flipper apparatus, marking it as a highly derived stem penguin flourishing in tropical seas. Its presence near the ancient equator during one of Earth's warmest intervals overturns earlier models of penguin biogeography, showing that these proficient underwater hunters invaded low-latitude oceans tens of millions of years earlier than once thought. Tassodyptes, once hailed as the Hunter Island penguin from a Tasmanian midden, is now understood, through ancient DNA and renewed anatomical study, to be an artificial assemblage of bones from 3 living species rather than a distinct Holocene taxon. This ghost lineage, dissolved by molecular evidence, stands as a cautionary marker in penguin paleontology, reminding us how fragmentary remains and human-modified deposits can temporarily conjure species that never truly existed. Kairoku, the elegant giant of the late Oligocene Zealandian seas, united a tall, narrow-bodied frame, exceptionally long flippers and a slender spear-like bill, forming a distinctive stem penguin lineage reconstructed from some of the most complete fossil skeletons known. Striding ashore on stout legs and plunging offshore as a deep-ranging pursuit diver alongside other penguin species, it captures a mature stage in penguin evolution where colossal size, refined underwater flight and complex ecological partitioning were already firmly in place. Duntroenornis, the diminutive dentroon penguin of the late Oligocene Kikomu greensand, is known from a small but distinctive tarsometatarsus that secures it among Zealandia's stem penguins at a size comparable to the Fiordland crested penguin. This compact, shore-nesting diver likely patrolled shallow temperate seas alongside much larger relatives, exemplifying how modest-bodied lineages persisted and partitioned prey within New Zealand's rich Oligocene penguin assemblages. Nguza, from the early Pliocene sands of Langebandweg on South Africa's west coast, is a medium-sized penguin known from a distinctively built tarsometatarsus that warranted removal from Spheniscus and marks it as a near-crown lineage exploiting the Benguela upwelling. Its intriguing mix of traits and timing, coinciding with the arrival and reshuffling of modern penguin stocks in the region, suggests either a close tie to lineages such as Pygocelis or a fleeting remnant of an older branch, underscoring how rapidly penguin faunas responded to changing coastal oceans. Palaeoapteridites, described from a single weathered proximal humerus from Oligocene, Miocene Patagonia, was once imagined as an almost wingless penguin but is now recognized as too incomplete for secure generic placement, likely representing an indeterminate member of Spheniscidae. As such, it lingers as a nomen dubium on the margins of the penguin record, a reminder that not every tantalizing fragment can reliably anchor a distinct evolutionary story. Pseudaptenodytes, from the late Miocene, early Pliocene shores of Victoria, represents a medium-sized stem penguin lineage centered on Macraei, whose autapomorphic humerus clearly sets it apart from aptenodytes even as the doubtful minor likely reflects smaller individuals of the same form. Moving through temperate coastal waters with robust, near-modern flippers, it marks a transitional stage in which archaic southern penguin lineages were giving way to the compact, efficient divers that dominate today's Spheniscidae. Turingoornis is a Middle Pliocene sphenicid from New Zealand known from coracoid and humeral remains that indicate a bird slightly smaller than the Fiordland crested penguin, and historically notable as one of the first fossil penguins named from the North Island. Later re-evaluation shows its bones cannot be reliably distinguished from modern crested or yellow-eyed penguins, rendering Turingoornis a likely nomen dubium but still marking the presence of a small, near-crowned penguin in these temperate coastal waters. Carora is a small and slender Weytakian-age spheniciform known only from a single tarsometatarsus from the Hokitaramia Valley, hinting at a bird roughly crested penguin size that trod New Zealand's shores in the late Oligocene, early Miocene. Its gracile foot bones evoke a nimble coastal diver, an early experiment in compact penguin design whose Maori name quietly links this lost form to the living little penguins that still haunt the same seas. Dege, from the latest Miocene, early Pliocene Varswater Formation at Langebandweg, South Africa, is a large near-crowned penguin whose stout tarsometatarsus, robust hindlimb and distinctive humeral anatomy separate it from Inguza and living Spheniscus while placing it securely within advanced Sphenicidae. In life it likely matched or exceeded the African penguin in stature, coursing through nutrient-rich coastal waters as a strong, efficient pursuit diver shaped by ocean upwelling systems much like those that sustain modern seabird faunas there today. Marplesornis is known from a rare, near-complete Motuna beach skeleton that reveals a king penguin-sized bird perched just outside the crown group, representing one of the last major stem lineages before the modern radiation of Spheniscidae. In life it would have cut a sleek figure through temperate New Zealand waters, a robust fish-hunting diver whose anatomy links archaic giants to the more compact, efficient predators that inhabit those coasts today. Delphinornis, a genus of small, slender-footed penguins from the late Eocene seas of Seymour Island, threads through the rich La Meseta record as one of the most abundant non-giant spheniciforms and a serious contender for lying close to the ancestry of modern penguins. With species such as Larcini built around elongate, lightly constructed tarsometatarsi, a graceful pelvis and hind limbs comparable in size to today's mid-sized penguins, these birds evoke agile, fast-kicking pursuit divers weaving through cool coastal channels rather than lumbering giant forms. Their limb anatomy, internal bone structure and overwhelming numerical dominance in some horizons together capture a pivotal experiment in compact, efficient Antarctic penguins, where refined underwater flight and flexible foraging ecologies were already firmly established. Anthropornis, a colossal Palaeeudyptine penguin of the late Eocene, earliest Oligocene, reached around 2 meters in body length and up to around 100 kilograms, dominating the cool marine shelves recorded in the La Meseta Formation of Seymour Island and coeval deposits in New Zealand. Its skeleton unites massively built limb bones and a deep, heavy trunk with a peculiar bent elbow joint in the wing, read as a vestige of flying ancestors, capturing a moment when the flipper had become a powerful hydrofoil yet still whispered of an aerial past. As an immense, slow but forceful pursuit diver preying on large fishes and cephalopods, Anthropornis marks an extreme in the penguin experiment with gigantism, framing the ecological ceiling against which later spheniciform body plans can be measured. Anthropodyptes, known from a robust Middle Miocene humerus from coastal Victoria, is a shadowy Palaeeudyptine grade penguin whose Archaeospheniscus-like wing bone hints at a distinctive Australian offshoot of the great southern giant penguin radiation. The powerful yet archaic flipper architecture implied by this single bone evokes a deep-chested, strong-swimming diver cruising temperate shelves as ancient giant lineages met rising competition from modern-style marine mammals and crown-ward penguins. Mesetaeornis, a late Eocene penguin from the La Meseta deposits of Seymour Island, is known from distinctive tarsometatarsi that separate it from the contemporary Palaeeudyptine giants and secure it as a discrete, smaller-bodied polar lineage within the rich Antarctic fauna. With compact, well-balanced hind limbs that imply a mid-sized, efficient swimmer, Mesetaeornis adds nuance to this assemblage, signaling how penguins were already diversifying into contrasting body plans and feeding strategies as southern ecosystems edged toward the Eocene-Oligocene climatic shift. Slender traces of Marumbiornis emerge from the upper La Meseta beds as a tiny, long-legged Antarctic penguin, diagnosed by its strongly elongated tarsometatarsus with distinctive hypotarsal morphology that clearly separates it from both the Palaeeudyptine giants and its small-bodied neighbors. In life it likely moved with quick, precise steps over low gravel shores before slipping into cool coastal channels, where its refined hindlimb proportions and light frame suited an agile pursuit diver weaving through a water column shared with far bulkier Eocene penguins. Palaeeudyptes unites a suite of giant Eocene, Oligocene penguins, from emperor-sized forms to the towering Klekoski exceeding 2 meters in body length and around 116 kilograms, documented across Antarctica's La Meseta Formation, New Zealand limestones and even outcrops in Australia and Chile. Osteologically they define the Palaeodyptinae grade, long, narrow flippers, robust yet somewhat primitive limb joints and tarsometatarsi less specialized than in living penguins, signaling powerful swimmers that had not yet fully arrived at the modern sphenicid blueprint. Ranging over broad southern shelves, these massive divers likely pursued sizable fishes and cephalopods and stand as a dramatic expression of archaic penguin gigantism against which later, more compact lineages can be measured. Pachydyptes, the New Zealand giant penguin, loomed over the late Eocene shores of Otago at roughly 1.6 meters in length and up to 100 kilograms, rivaling Anthropornis in bulk and standing among the heaviest penguins ever known. Known for massive wing and pectoral elements that place it near the base of the great southern giant penguin radiation, its anatomy speaks of a deep-chested, powerfully flippered diver descended from volant ancestors but now utterly committed to underwater flight. In the cool shelf seas fringing Zealandia, Pachydyptes likely moved with imposing, deliberate strokes through dim water, targeting sizable fishes and squid and helping define the ecological upper limit of penguin gigantism. Archaeospheniscus gathers 3 species of large Paleogene penguins that ranged from gentoo-sized Vimani in the Eocene seas of Seymour Island to near-emperor-sized forms in the Oligocene Kikoamu greensand of New Zealand, outlining a widespread lineage at the sophisticated edge of early Spheniscidae. With slim, almost volant-style humeri coupled to tarsometatarsi that fuse primitive and modern traits, these birds likely carved through coastal waters in long, controlled strokes while standing ashore in a posture strikingly penguin-like, embodying either a close ancestral stock of living species or a refined parallel experiment in the evolution of underwater flight. Platydyptes, the broad diver of New Zealand's late Oligocene, early Miocene seas, gathers 3 large species whose remains from North Otago to South Canterbury chart one of the most crown-ward radiations among stem penguins. Their signature broad, flattened humerus and wide, stiffened flippers, married to increasingly modern hind limbs, signal powerful, energy-efficient swimmers capable of long foraging runs over shallow continental shelves. In life, platydyptes would have moved through these temperate waters as tall, sleek hunters roughly king penguin scale, sharing space with archaic giants while foreshadowing the compact, high-performance body plans of living Spheniscidae. Erytiscus, aptly dubbed the tiny rower, is an early Miocene Patagonian penguin from the Gaiman Formation, known from a remarkably small and slender tarsometatarsus and associated wing bones that align it with the South American Paleospheniscine radiation and make it one of the smallest penguins yet recognized, roughly in the little blue size class. In life it would have slipped almost noiselessly through the shallow Atlantic shallows, its fine-boned feet and compact flippers suited to quick, agile pursuits of small fishes among a crowd of much larger Miocene penguin neighbors. Palaeospheniscus, namesake of the Palaeospheniscinae, flourished along Miocene Patagonian and South American coasts as a suite of medium to relatively tall slender-footed penguins, from the compact bilocular to the taller Patagonicus, clearly distinct from modern Spheniscus despite the resemblance in build. With elongate, gracile tarsometatarsi and streamlined flippers tuned for agile pursuit, these birds would have moved through cool, nearshore waters in dense mixed colonies of archaic and crownwort species, embodying a refined, high-performance experiment in penguin design just outside the living radiation. Arthrodites, from the late Eocene, early Oligocene San Julian Formation of Patagonia, is a medium-sized member of the Paraptenodytinae whose preserved humerus, coracoid, scapula and tarsometatarsi reveal a robust flipper and stout hind limb distinct from both giant Palaeeudyptines and modern Spheniscus. Evoking a compact, muscular diver working the cool, current-swept shelves of ancient Argentina, it represents a specialized southern lineage that explored its own solution to underwater flight on a branch parallel to that of living penguins. Paraptenodytes, anchored by the well-known Antarcticas from the early, Middle Miocene shores of Patagonia, belongs to the distinctive Paraptenodytinae and combines a deep, robust skull with powerful flippers and stout legs, marking it as a muscular, mid- to large-sized penguin quite separate from the ancestry of living Spheniscus. Picture it surging through cool Atlantic swells in long, deliberate chases after fish and cephalopods, a confident specialist thriving in densely populated coastal communities where multiple archaic and crownwort penguin lineages overlapped. Spheniscus, the banded penguins, are today represented by 4 noisy, donkey-braying species, but their story is shadowed by a suite of fossil relatives that once lined the Pacific and Atlantic coasts of South America and beyond. Among the earliest of these is Spheniscus muezzoni from the Miocene Pisco Formation of Peru, already showing the familiar wedge-flippered, banded-bodied profile and marking the first appearance of the modern genus in the fossil record. Later forms such as Urbanae and the formidable Megaramphus evolved outsized, strongly hooked beaks and heavy bobblehead skulls, suggesting powerful predators capable of seizing large, agile prey in the rich upwelling systems of the ancient Humboldt Current. Chilensis and Anglicus, from Chilean and possibly more temperate settings, extend this fossil radiation into the late Miocene, Pliocene, revealing multiple regionally adapted lineages experimenting with size, bill shape, and coastal niches while retaining the Spheniscus blueprint. Across these extinct species, the combination of burrow or crevice nesting, banded counter-shaded plumage, and sophisticated, individually distinctive vocal repertoires links them behaviorally and visually to their living cousins. Together, they chart a dynamic history of repeated expansions along the Humboldt and Benguela currents and into new shorelines, tracking cooling oceans and shifting productivity belts through deep time. What survives today in the 4 extant banded penguins is just the last narrow braid of this once broader Spheniscus experiment, a reminder that even modern-looking penguins have a rich fossil entourage at their backs. The Magellanic penguin, the tireless traveler of the southern cone, is a medium-sized banded penguin that shuttles between dense burrow colonies in Patagonia and vast feeding grounds off Brazil and Peru, using rigid oar-like wings to dive 50 meters after fish, squid, krill and even jellyfish while living decades-long lives anchored by fierce nest site fidelity and voice-based pair recognition. Yet this seemingly abundant species is quietly strained by oiling, fisheries bycatch and climate-driven shifts in prey and storm regimes, so that each black and white bird threading home through the surf now also carries the deep evolutionary memory and uncertain future of the entire Spheniscus lineage. Humboldt penguin rides the cold, glittering flow of the Humboldt Current from Peru to Chile, a heavy-bodied banded penguin that launches at dawn from guano-capped cliffs and burrowed headlands to hunt shimmering schools of anchovy, saury and squid by sight in tight, shallow, high-speed dives. Bound to this upwelling engine, its colonies, held together by intricate, individually unique braying displays and faithful pair bonds, now sit on a knife edge of vulnerability, squeezed by El Niño warmings, prey fisheries, guano loss and bycatch, making each returning bird a small, urgent victory against a changing sea. The Galápagos penguin is a slight, dark-hooded banded penguin that hugs the lava shores of Fernandina and Isabella, cooling itself in shade and surf as cold Humboldt and Cromwell waters well up beneath the equator to deliver dense shoals of anchovy and mullet within a few kilometers of its cave and crevice nests. Endemic, low in genetic diversity and exquisitely tied to these fragile currents, it breeds opportunistically year-round yet sees its tiny population whiplashed by El Niño heatwaves, invasive predators and human impacts, making each surviving pair a rare tropical outpost of the Spheniscus lineage. The African penguin cuts through the swell off Namibia and South Africa as a sleek, black-masked pursuit diver, its pink supraorbital glands flushing in the heat and its unique constellation of breast spots marking each bird like a fingerprint while it chases sardine and anchovy through cold Benguela water. Now reduced to only a few thousand breeding pairs and declining fast through prey depletion, oiling and shifting currents, this last old world penguin has become a litmus test for how quickly we can restore a food web before the surf falls silent over its empty nesting beaches. Eudyptula, the little divers of Australasia, compressed the penguin design into 35 centimeters, slate blue, nocturnal burrow nester that threads silently back to shore after dusk, and genetic work now reveals this glow of tiny bodies hides 2 sibling species, Minor of New Zealand and Novahellandii of Australia and Otago, locked in a recent history of turnover and recolonization. Eudyptula wilsoni, known from exquisitely small late Pliocene skulls in the Tangaho Formation and matching modern little penguins in size but with a finer, more tapered beak, anchors this lineage deep in Zealandia's past, showing that today's fairy penguins are the surviving crest of a long, diminutive tradition along New Zealand's coasts. The little penguin condenses the penguin blueprint into a palm-sized, midnight returning shadow, a 30-centimeter slate blue bird that rows ashore under cover of darkness to its burrows and rock crevices, its softer hues and vocal dialect setting it apart from its Australian sister species. At sea it is a nimble inshore hunter, making short, shallow dives for small fishes and crustaceans along fragmented coasts increasingly shared with humans, so that this tiniest living penguin now carries an outsized role as a coastal sentinel of New Zealand's changing marine ecosystems. The Australian little penguin is a cobalt-sheened, pocket-sized sphenicid now recognized as a species distinct from minor, breeding from Western Australia to New South Wales and in Otago, where its dense evening penguin parades pulse between surf and burrowed dunes. Drawing on flexible inshore foraging, group hunting of tiny schooling fish and the capacity to double brood in good years, it has adapted with remarkable finesse to variable seas and human-dominated coasts, yet its tiny stature and tight coastal range leave it acutely exposed to warming waters, shoreline development, and local prey collapses. Megadypts gathers the yellow-eyed penguin and its recently recognized extinct kin, most notably the mainland Waidaha penguin, into a distinctive, large-bodied lineage more closely allied to crested penguins than to the tiny Eudyptula, their golden eye bands and long, predatory bills framing birds evolved for benthic foraging along cool New Zealand currents. Ancient DNA shows that human-driven extinction of Waidaha only centuries ago opened space for today's hoiho to colonize the mainland, so each shy, forest-nesting pair glimpsed at dusk is both a survivor of deep evolutionary time and the beneficiary of a very recent, fragile reshuffling of New Zealand's penguin fauna. The crested penguins form a flamboyant southern dynasty of sharp-billed, yellow-plumed divers whose fossil record shows that today's island outposts are only the remnant sparks of a once broader blaze. The recently discovered Chatham-crested penguin known from late Holocene bones, reveals a large, distinct species erased within a few centuries of human arrival, making it one of the youngest and most sobering fossil penguins on record. Further back, the Eudyptes additu from Pliocene Taranaki anchors the lineage in New Zealand 3 million years ago, with a slenderer beak that hints at ancestral foraging styles before modern species radiated across the subantarctic. Ancient DNA from subfossil bones shows that multiple prehistoric Eudyptes lineages once shared New Zealand's coasts, some persisting into Maori times, others vanishing silently as climates shifted and people spread. Together, these living and lost crested penguins sketch an evolutionary storyline where extravagant plumage and complex calls sit atop a history of rapid dispersal, island endemism, and repeated human-shadowed extinctions. The Fiordland crested penguin threads yellow plumes back through dripping temperate rainforest, nesting in shadowed caves and root tangles along New Zealand's fjord-slashed coast while diving in distinct inner mid and outer fjord foraging corridors for squid, krill and fish. Its thick beak, nocturnal landfall and unusual two-egg strategy, where a tiny first egg almost never succeeds and the larger second chick is favored, mark a highly specialized, ancient crested lineage now quietly contracting under predation, disturbance and shifting seas at the rugged edge of its range. The snare's crested penguin crowds its entire world onto a tiny, forested island group south of New Zealand, where dense colonies of black and white birds with drooping gold crests and a blush of bare pink skin at the bill-base trumpet, hiss, and bow through the spray. Feeding chiefly on nyctophanes krill, small fish and squid taken on dives that can exceed 100 meters, this offshore foraging specialist relies on synchrony with plankton blooms and the continued safety of its single breeding stronghold, an evolutionary success story rendered precarious by its exquisite geographic narrowness. The erect crested penguin is the largest of the crested penguins, a stocky black and white bird crowned with bold upright yellow plumes, breeding only on the remote Bounty and Antipodes Islands before vanishing into subantarctic swells for a winter life almost entirely out of sight. Its breeding biology, only recently probed in detail, reveals extreme egg size dimorphism and obligate brood reduction set against a marked long-term population decline, leaving this striking but little-known species as one of the most precarious and enigmatic specialists in the entire penguin radiation. The western rockhopper penguin is the smallest fire-crested Palaeeudyptes, a slate-backed acrobat that bounds up spray-slick cliffs on stiff orange legs, its straight golden eyebrow plumes flaring as it launches from tussock ledges into cold subantarctic swells around the Falklands and southern South America. Living at the energetic edge, diving pelagically and benthically for krill, squid and lanternfish, yet having lost over a third of its global numbers in recent decades, it has become a vivid, storm-battered gauge of how industrial fishing and shifting oceans reverberate through the crested penguin lineage. The eastern rockhopper penguin is a tempest-realm cliff climber of the subantarctic, its spiky yellow brows and pink-rimmed bill flashing above dense, shouting colonies on the Antipodes, Auckland, Campbell and Macquarie Islands before the birds fan thousands of kilometers across cold eddy-rich currents in winter. Anchored to predictable krill, fish and squid swarms yet already in steep decline as warming seas, shifting fronts and harsher storms erode that reliability, it stands as a wiry, defiant emblem of how finely tuned crested penguins are to the structure of the Southern Ocean. The northern rockhopper penguin is the largest and most flamboyant of the rockhoppers, with long streaming golden tassels and a wide pink gape, crowding into roaring cliff colonies on Tristan da Cunha, Gough, Amsterdam and St. Paul Islands to plunge after krill, fish and cephalopods in temperate subantarctic seas. Genetic, behavioral and even parasite evidence mark it as a sharply distinct lineage, yet a catastrophic around 90% decline since the 1950s has left this cliff-shouting, spray-battered bird one of the most endangered crested penguins, its survival hinging on the safekeeping of a few remote volcanic outposts. The royal penguin is a stout crested Palaeeudyptes that trades the dark mask of its macaroni cousins for a pale face and golden crown, packing into roaring beach and hillside colonies on Macquarie Island before vanishing for months into the subantarctic to gorge on krill, small fish and squid. Long treated as either a full species or a pale-faced macaroni, it shares the genus extreme two-egg, one-chick strategy and obligate brood reduction, standing as a living test case of how subtle shifts in plumage, genetics and life history can mark an evolutionary branch within the crested penguin radiation. The macaroni penguin surges ashore in roaring orange-billed throngs from the subantarctic to the Antarctic peninsula, gold lashes blazing over dark faces as they pack cliff ledges and beaches into some of the densest seabird colonies on Earth to rear a single chick from two precarious eggs. Fueled by vast swarms of Antarctic krill, making them the largest consumer of marine life of any seabird, and roaming thousands of kilometers across the Southern Ocean outside the breeding season, this most numerous of penguins is nonetheless sliding into vulnerability as warming waters, shifting prey and fisheries pressure chip away at its once immense multitudes. Madronornis, from the early-late Miocene seas of Puerto Madryn in Patagonia, is a near-Adderley-sized penguin known from an exceptionally complete skeleton whose finely balanced limb and skull proportions place it close to the root of modern Spheniscidae rather than among archaic giant forms. In life, it would have cut through sheltered Atlantic embayments as an efficient pursuit diver with a sleek, modern-style flipper and sturdy feet, capturing a pivotal stage where the familiar body plan of living penguins was crystallizing in South America. Pygocelis, the brush-tailed penguins, form an ancient Antarctic-centered lineage that diverged from other penguins around 38 million years ago, with the Adderley branch splitting from Gentoo chinstrap stock roughly 19 million years later. Their fossil entourage, Grandis, a king penguin-sized giant from the Bahia Inglesa formation, Calderensis with its elegantly specialized cranium from the same Chilean coast, and Tyrrhei from Pliocene Motuna Beach in New Zealand, shows brush-tailed penguins once ranged far beyond today's ice margins, occupying productive neogene upwelling systems across the southern Pacific. Sharing the streamlined bodies and stiff, high-gear flippers of their living relatives, these extinct forms likely sliced through cool, plankton-rich waters in fast, high-frequency dives, targeting swarms of small fish and crustaceans along shifting continental shelves. As a whole, Pygoscelis captures an evolutionary thread in which modern Antarctic colonies are merely the latest, icy expression of a once widespread, experimentally diverse brush-tail tradition. The Adelie penguin forms immense colonies on bare coastal rock and then rides the drifting winter pack ice, pursuing krill, silverfish and squid with rapid, precise dives that reflect a lineage finely tuned to life at the edge of the frozen ocean. Bold, quarrelsome and incurably curious, Adelies now serve as living climate gauges, their shifting numbers and breeding success tracing in real time the transformation of sea ice and southern ocean ecosystems. The chinstrap penguin rings the Southern Ocean in vast, shouting colonies, its neat black chinstrap and crisp counter-shaded suit framing a tireless swimmer that commutes tens of kilometers offshore through pack ice to harvest krill, fish and squid. Brisk, pugnacious and remarkably cold-hardened, with dense plumage, fat reserves and stone-built nests defending their chicks from skuas and storms, it stands as the combative, high-energy counterpart to its brush-tailed relatives along Antarctica's shifting ice edge. The Genta penguin is the swiftest swimmer of its clan, sleek, orange-billed and white-hooded, racing through subantarctic shallows at up to 36 km per hour and commuting between exuberantly noisy stone ring nests and rich feeding grounds for fish, squid and krill. Expanding southward as ice retreats yet declining in several traditional colonies, this adaptable rump-tailed specialist now traces a complex story of winners and losers in a rapidly restructured Southern Ocean. Ridgeon's penguin is a Pliocene great penguin from Otuna Beach that bridges the size gap between today's king and emperor penguins, its aptenodytes-like leg bones and newly described skull material revealing a warm water outpost of a lineage now confined to polar and subpolar seas. In life it would have been a powerfully built, deep-diving specialist cruising subtropical Zealandia shelves, showing that the basal great penguin radiation once roamed far beyond the icy latitudes we now instinctively associate with their modern descendants. The king penguin is a sleek, flame-necked diver of the subantarctic frontiers, second only to the emperor in size and adapted to commute hundreds of kilometers from immense, year-round colonies to repeatedly plunge beyond 100 meters after mesopelagic lanternfish, squid and krill. Its unusually prolonged 14 to 16-month breeding cycle, strict reliance on productive frontal zones and recovery from past exploitation now make it both a symbol of Southern Ocean resilience and a finely calibrated sentinel of how shifting currents and climate will reshape great penguin strongholds. The emperor penguin carries the great penguin blueprint to its extreme, a towering, densely feathered body crowned with saffron or auroral patches, marching deep into the Antarctic darkness to breed on stable sea ice while most life retreats north. Structured hemoglobin, crush-resistant bones, and exquisite metabolic control let it plunge beyond half a kilometer into black water for fish, squid, and krill, making this lineage both a physiological outlier among birds and the ultimate specialist in turning polar night and pressure into opportunity.